Fiero is a woman of many talents with a career spanning over 2 decades. She has created her own brand in artist management, event planning, marketing PR, and most recently her female empowerment conference, Girl Power. I consider her a mentor and a friend. Please welcome Carrie Fiero. Thank you for being with us today.
Hello. Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you and see your face.
I know it's been too long, as usual.
As usual, but here we are coming back
Yes,
together.
I know. I love it. We always get our year-end check-ins, I think.
It's true. That's true. Sometimes online.
Yes, these days it definitely seems to be more online focused. Um,
Yep.
but I am really excited to have you here with us today because you have had so much great experience in so many different focus areas of the music industry, and just want to jump right in and want to hear about how your career has spanned and how you got your start in the music industry. Maybe if you could talk us through some of your career highs and lows. I'm sure our viewers would love to hear it.
Oh, absolutely. So I didn't go to college for this industry. I went for physical therapy, and I was determining if I was going to get a master's or not after I got my degree. And while I was sort of on a sabbatical from that, my friends were signed to Atlantic Records. And I was living in Washington, D.C. They were signed to the label in New York, and they said, "Oh, come hang out with us. We're going to, get wined and dined and sign our contracts and do a photo shoot and do a music video." So I went up to New York and initially just sort of kind of acted like their assistant because they were friends of mine and I'm, of course, willing to help. And after a week of that, shooting the video and the photo shoot for the album cover and just being in that world, it lit a fire in me that, wow, this is a career. And then, like, about 2 or 3 months later, they said, "Would you like to tour with us in France?" And I don't know who
Wow.
says no to that. So again, like, I'm not yet considering this a career. I'm just thinking like this is just a fun opportunity. So we went over to France and they had a Queen remix that they had done that was sort of like a hip hop R&B version of the song. And we're waiting backstage. They have these dancers that are French speaking only. So we can't communicate, but they've like choreographed this whole routine, and all the audience is saying, "The braids, the braids, the braids," which was, they were called the braids. And the smoke is coming up, and there's like, I just said, "Oh my God, this is a career." I'm about to head back to California and pivot really quickly. And I came back with like a mission to learn the music business. And I think, there's people that just fall into it. And I was definitely one of those people. So for me, we talked about the highs and the lows. Like in the beginning, I didn't know anything about the industry, right? I'm such a novice person coming into the industry. So I'm working with this group. They were recording their first album. So that meant they were in the studio. There wasn't a lot to do with them. But one of the gals had a brother who was in the jazz music industry. And so I asked his manager if I could shadow her to see, like, what does a manager do? And about 3 weeks into that, the manager quit and I became the manager.
Oh,
So now
wow.
I have the group in the studio and the guy that's touring and still, don't really know the music business. And so just started reading every single book. I read Donald Passman's Everything You Need to Know About the Music
Yes.
Business, literally
Very
with
familiar with
a
that one.
highlighter. Yeah, from front to back with a highlighter, like, okay. And then I got a mentor, which was great. I had a friend who was in a rock band and he had an incredible music attorney, Michael Ashburn, who's dear to my heart to this day. And he was just willing to like answer questions I had along the way. As I got stuck, obviously. Um, a lot of bumps in the road,
Yes.
as you're learning the industry. So because I was really like, I'm not going to go to graduate school for physical therapy. This is going to be my master's program of this music industry, I took a job with a company called the Rosebud Agency. And at the time, their main client was John Lee Hooker, who is just like a legend, a blues legend. So, and they also have the Robert Cray Band, which is a band that tours relentlessly. So it was really neat to like be working in a management firm and get to see like how operations, are handled, and how marketing is handled, and how merchandise is handled, and how do you get the visas for people to travel internationally? So to me, the Rosebud Agency was really my master's program for how does management work?
Yeah. A lot of on the job learning, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
And
find,
sometimes that's great learning.
oh, 100%. I have found most of my industry experience has been all on the job learning. I have, of course, taken courses with, with you. That's how we know each other, but you don't really understand the specifics of what you're doing until you actually get into the job, and then specific situations arise that you then have to deal with. Like just a lot of, I guess, fires or situations like that you may have to just put out in and then hey, now you know how to do it.
Yep, it's true. I mean, I can tell you, like, right from the beginning, one of my biggest lows, lows are such a good experience for learning if you have a growth mindset. And so this jazz artist that I was working with, he's so, 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 so talented. So he often would get picked up by a rock band or a blues band or a R&B band. Like he really could play any genre. So he was going to do this big New Year's Eve concert, and I think it was with the Counting Crows, if I'm not mistaken. It was a big band, and it was going to be a big honor. He was going to be this special guest, and like in the jazz world, it can be this small niche. So to be able to perform in a New Year's Eve show with this big band was going to be a big thing, and I was so excited. And as a manager, I want to promote my artist, so I blasted it all over his website, only to find out that this band, the main band, had this whole strategy of how there was going to be like this wild goose chase through San Francisco to get the golden ticket, to get the code, to buy it was going to be this whole thing that I had blown it by putting it on the website.
Oh no, it was
Because it was like going to be this secret thing, this whole buildup, right? I remember getting the call where like my client was like furious with me, and he was like, they're about to yank me off the show. So I immediately took it down, and then I just had to go do damage control. And I was like, I'm brand new. I was just trying to promote my artist. And luckily, like he didn't have so many people eyeball the website at the time that it was up. But you learn from these things. But that was a low of like, yeah, I'm a rookie.
I screwed this up, but you took responsibility for it, and
Yeah,
now you probably learned from that hey, I'll get
definitely.
the DL on the marketing strategy before I go off and do my own
Yes,
thing.
indeed, indeed.
Well,
So around this time, is when I launched Strive Management as well.
yes, and that's actually what I was going to ask you next. So you created Strive Management after your Rosebud experience. How did you find artists to work with? What were your, a lot of independent artists now are looking for management and are asking themselves like, what can I do to pick up a manager myself? And just wondering how you found talent, what you would look for in the things that they were doing, and how did you help them grow their careers?
Yeah, I would say that they found me just by word of mouth with friends. So it wasn't so much like she's so great, because in the beginning I was very new. So it wasn't like my reputation of being this amazing manager, but it was that I got stuff done and could be trusted. And that's such a big thing, the trust and respect between a manager and an artist. And so I was working with the Jazz Act, and he told me about this whole big band jazz group, and so then they became my clients. And then they told me about this flugelhorn jazz player. So he became my client. And they were all sort of working the same venues, working the same, journalists that write about jazz. And so they that became like sort of the beginning of Strive Management. And then luckily I was very good friends with a musician who was the other half of R&B icon Lettucey. And she was, all these groups, these jazz groups and Lettucey were all tremendous live musicians. So in your question of how did I grow these groups, it was the plan was always just get on as many stages as you could possibly get on.
Oh, for sure.
That was the marketing for them and growing their careers. But I want to go back to your question about how do artists find managers? Because that is really important and very challenging for a young act. And, you'll hear me probably say many times, networking is always the way. Doing research to find out like local bands that you like, who's managing them, reach out, see if they have room for you, asking for referrals from people. I just think that's always the best way to find management and start a relationship with someone.
And, as an artist first starting out, are there things that the artist should be doing to be able to find a manager? What would you recommend for somebody maybe just beginning their career?
I highly recommend that you put on your business hat and that you self-manage, because that makes you more manageable to an artist. All the people that I met were all self-managed first. Lettucey didn't need me, right? Her and her partner Sandra Manning, they were able to do everything they needed to do for themselves. And then I just became like an extra help in that, right? So
Sure.
I think it's really important for new artists to book their own shows to see what that feels like. Write a press release, write a bio, do everything you can at the level that you're at so that you are then ready for management and to be managed, because you have the vision and you know the work that it takes.
For sure, for sure. No, it's very good advice, and I find that a lot of the self-starters are the ones that really push themselves forward. You can't rely on somebody else to do the work for you, especially at the very beginning of your career. That's when you should be working the hardest to be putting yourself out there.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And like Dave Matthews was like a great example of somebody who just did not feel like he needed an agent. He's like, I'm booking all my own shows. I don't see the point. And it wasn't until he became really big that he finally was like, okay, we can do an agreement here, a partnership agreement, to get the help. But I think it's great for artists to really run their own business first.
Oh, 100%. As an entrepreneur myself, that's exactly how Label got their start as well. And only after maybe 5 or 7 years were we able to finally book things easier or get promotion easier. So that definitely makes sense. Mm. Um, and so after Strive Management, what made you pivot and create your company Fiero Flair, which has a focus on event planning?
Okay, so Stride Management was my baby. I loved it. And I got to work with so many artists during so many years. Just, I loved it. And I was consumed by it when I did it. And, and at the time that I was a manager, one of my side hustles or side interests that I did was I taught at San Francisco State. And so I was teaching in their music business program, which is no longer there. But I taught in that program for 10 years. And the head of the program asked me if I would pivot over to the event planning program and teach in that program. And I said, oh, I'm not an event planner. I don't have any experience in that. And she's like, you do hundreds of events. You just don't call them events. You call them CD release party. You call them meet and greet. You call them concert. And I was like, gosh, she's right. Like, it really is the event industry just in a different way. And so I began teaching in that program, and that is really what made me pivot. Was that like I sort of saw this bigger, broader industry, the relation of the music business to the event industry, and that the skills as a manager, organization, people person, would transfer right on over to the event planning industry. And so I gave birth to a little preemie baby and took off a year because he was a little diddle when he was born, and came back into the event planning industry. So like left in the music business, had a baby, a year later came back in the event planning industry.
Wow. That's incredible to me. As a new mother, you're also starting a new business. So you have two babies.
Right. But see, management to me was always like this all encompassing 24-hour day job.
Hmm.
The event industry, what I've always liked about it is that you work for 3 days, 18-hour days, and then you're sort of off again to plan the next
Yep,
thing.
that's true.
And so the lifestyle worked better for me as a parent.
No, that definitely makes sense. And to discuss more on your event planning, we have really come together on your most recent creation, Girl Power, women working in the music industry. What was your inspiration for creating this event? I'm just curious because it's been such a powerful force, I think, for so many women that I think it was a wonderful idea and would just love to hear the background on it and some positive effects of creating it.
Definitely. That is my baby. I miss it dearly since we haven't done it during the pandemic. So basically, when I was an artist and manager, I was a young woman. I often felt like the only woman in the room. I often felt like I was like immediately perceived as the artist assistant or the girlfriend to the band and not the manager. And so I had my own, and I had, there was sexual harassment. I mean, there were some definite things that I experienced as a woman in the music business. So when I was teaching at San Francisco State, all the young women that would be in my class, there'd be 20 students and two would be women and 18 would be men. And I was like, oh my God, it looks just like the music business in here,
Yeah.
you know, where there was like outnumbered. And the women would say to me, it's so refreshing having a female professor talk to us about the music business because then we get to see ourselves in you. And so really it was my students that inspired me to do the conference because I remember feeling like that. Like you'd meet a
Yes.
woman in the industry and you're like, oh, tell me everything about your life. So I remember that feeling. So I did the first one at San Francisco State. Actually, the first couple were at San Francisco State. And the feedback was just like empowering and inspirational and nourishing. And it was so kumbaya for all of these women to come together and share this experience. And I think it's a powerful conference to inspire and empower women.
100%. I probably came into the field maybe a decade or so after you. And even at that point, I still felt like I was the only woman, or maybe two, or maybe there was another female promoter or a female artist around. And I do feel that the efforts that you have put in, that maybe I have put in, we're you're now seeing a generation of female leaders in the music industry that we have not seen before. There's female artists, female promoters, but it's still a minority. And while some of these problems have, sort of gone away, there's still a real lack of diversity in the music industry. And so I really think programs like Girl Power can help kind of bring up women and show them that there are definite places for you in this field, and just women helping women instead of kind of this. I don't know. I've felt in other places I've worked at that women don't necessarily try to bring each other up. And so that's what I found really empowering about Girl Power is there's this really great, phenomenal resource network that you have, of helping each other grow bigger instead of trying to tear each other down. And that's what I feel is so important about the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Empowered women empower women. And the best thing in the whole world to me is when someone calls me and they're like, I met so and so at your conference and I got this great job now. Best thing ever.
Oh, 100. I got my first music industry job from your classwork. It was helping do a music licensing program, and this is when I was straight out of the program. So, Carrie, I just have to say you do so much for women and just for teaching and mentorship. And I'm so grateful for our relationship and all of the work that you've put in. And thank you for being with us today, and thank you so much for your insights on the industry.
Well, you are such a boss, and you call me, I'll come. I mean, I am such a huge fan of everything you're doing, and people are very fortunate to get to see what you put together today.
Likewise, likewise. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Carrie. I really,
You're
really appreciate
so
you.
welcome. My pleasure.
Take care.
All right, thank you.